Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Bolt with your host, Dr. Jeff Tilley. Today's topics: technical issues and Joshua Tree snowfall. It's not the end of the world. Sit back and relax and enjoy today's podcast. So, today's podcast is the second try at a podcast. I've been having technical issues with both Podbean, which hosts my podcasts in terms of the audio files, and with Apple Podcasts, where they get reflected so that people who otherwise are on Apple Podcasts can access the Daily Bolt. And so, this is take 2. I'm hoping it's the last take. We don't know totally what's going on, but we're trying it again, and we're hoping that it actually works out okay. So, with that in mind, let's go on without further ado to the main subject of today's podcast, which is otherwise going to be a relatively short one. Coming back after a couple of weeks break for the Christmas holiday, and we're going to get back into a whole bunch of new topics on the podcast and move forward into the new year. But we're going to start with a big item from last week, which was the snowfall in Joshua Tree National Park. Joshua Tree National Park is in Southern California. It's a high desert environment. It's higher in elevation than Palm Springs, which is nearby. There are mountainous regions within the park, which actually get snow a little bit more often than the high desert floor areas of the park. But when the high desert floor areas of the park do get snow, it's actually very beautiful. The snow is usually not too heavy. It lays a nice blanket of white into the high desert environment, and it always attracts attention. It's a relatively rare event, however, and this will be the second December in a row, second winter in a row, that we have had snow within Joshua Tree National Park. And that's already gotten some of the climate activists all into a tizzy. It's climate change. We're getting snow here the second year in a row. And I'm here to tell you, calm down. Relax, because this is not the first time that there's been snow in Joshua Tree on the desert floor 2 winters in a row. And in fact, we can go back to long before when there was any climate hysteria, and we can find 2 winters back to back where there was snow in Joshua Tree. So the first one of those goes back to 1960-61 and 1961-62 winters. This is not long after snowfall observations started in Joshua Tree National Park. There were 6 inches measured in the park on the floor the first winter, and about a half inch the second. So this is not necessarily anything that's super new and super alarming. We can bump up about another 7 years to the 1967-68 and the 1968-69 winters, when we had 8 inches and 4 inches respectively. There have been other winters with snow. 1970-71, 3 inches. 1973-74, 8.70. 2008-2009, 7. And unfortunately, we have a whole series of about 30 years where we don't have observations at all, because the station apparently was taken out of commission after the winter of 1973-74, and observations were not taken for whatever reason in Joshua Tree National Park until the 2008-2009 winter, roughly about October. I don't know the history of why that observation station was taken out. That's probably an interesting topic for another podcast, and what motivated its return in 2008-2009. Maybe it's just funding. Maybe there were other issues involved. But so we don't have a lot of records for the period between 1974 and 2008. But based on the frequency that we see in the years that we do have in the record, it's likely that there was snowfall several winters, probably especially during the El Nino winter 1992-93, other El Nino winters as well, and there may be others even there as well. That's a topic for some further research. But my main point for today's podcast is back-to-back winters with snowfall and Joshua Tree have happened before. They've happened before there was any concern about climate change, and they've probably happened all the way back in the pre-industrial period too, where we have no records. So it's not something to get all worked up about. It has happened before. It will happen again. Now, if we end up getting a situation where for the next 15, 16 years, we start seeing measurable snowfall in Joshua Tree every winter, then you might have an argument to get alarmed about. But we don't have that yet. This is something which is a nice rarity to enjoy visually, and to enjoy the fact that nature does have lots of natural variability and variety, no matter what the climate system is doing. So we'll leave it at that. We'll pick up with some other interesting science that's been going on over the past couple of weeks as we go forward through the week. And hopefully this podcast, take 2, will get uploaded properly and you'll be able to hear it before too much longer. For now, I'm Dr. Jeff Tilley. This is the Daily Bolt. Have a Happy New Year. If you don't hear this right away, and I'll keep wishing Happy New Year if we get a couple more in before the new year begins. But regardless, good night, good morning, good afternoon, and God bless. Oh, and by the way, this is the first time I've tried to put a little bit of background music on this. If you like it, let me know. If you hate it, I'll stop it. That's all for tonight.